Red Dead Redemption 2 is probably my favourite game that I've ever played, probably at least of this generation, but probably ever. It's a compelling game of action, heart and family, even if that falls apart eventually at the end. I haven't played the first Red Dead Redemption, but playing Red Dead Redemption 2 really motivates me to go back and get a new Xbox 360 and a copy of Red Dead Redemption 2. Actually, it's backwards compatible, so that's even better. Red Dead Redemption 2 is a prequel. It's pretty confusing because Red Dead Redemption 2 is a prequel, but then Red Dead Redemption 1 isn't a prequel. It still comes after 1, but then 2's before 1, and then 1's called 1 and 2. It's really confusing, probably because I'm special, like my mummy told me. I would like to note that this review does not cover the epilogue. It just covers the core story of Arthur Morgan and all that. I might review it in another video, depending on what reaction this video gets. I'll review the game chapter by chapter, just in case if anyone who's watching this hasn't played the game, which I really recommend you do. But I'll also say about how the narrative decisions and all that impact the player and impact the characters around him. Before we start delving into the 50-hour long story, let's talk about gameplay. From the get-go, you already know all the ins and outs of the game. If you've played GTA, the other Red Dead games, pretty much any Rockstar game, you spend countless hours on your controller, tapping A over and 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 over. You are native to the controller and the options at hand. However, like all Rockstar games, it can feel a little bit clunky at times. But the shooting, it's so satisfying, even though the aim assist carries you as much as the camel carried Mary and Joseph on the way to Bethlehem. But when you get 3 headshots in a row, you feel like Billy the Kid, with the fastest hands in the West. And to add to this, I don't know what triggers it, but there's these silky slow-mo shots that sort of just add a bit of seasoning to your gunfights and make sure it's not all the same. Every stranger's across every town you can interact with, and they're not just mindless world builders. They have their own daily routines, they have jobs, they have daily schedules. They wake up, sleep, work, hunt, have a night in, go to the saloon, all cowboyish things, but it really adds an impressive sort of detail to the game. No wonder the game is 92 gigabytes. However, I have had some weird experiences about the AI being weird.
So we can all have a nice little chat. I'm gonna head over there now to check she's okay.
With pleasure.
I'll take his horse. He won't be needing it.
What I don't like is the amount of spam you have to endure whilst playing the game. As I said about the tapping A over and over and over again, I'm surprised not many people have reported having carpal tunnel whilst playing this game. At least in GTA you got to have a nice break whilst getting in the cars. You can just press RT or whatever the PlayStation equivalent is, and you can just drive off, and it gives you a nice break from walking. But in Red Dead, no. Even the horses have got the clippity-clop and sync with your poor crooked finger. After 50 hours it gets a little bit annoying, but it's just a small complaint, but it impacts most of the gameplay in the game. I would also like to add that the game has never crashed on me. In fact, I wouldn't recommend it, but there's no need to save the game. I've had sessions at about 8 PM playing the game, then I went to bed with a warm glass of milk, then I woke up the next day and played it, and the Xbox has been off in between them 2 sessions, but it still manages to load me in the exact same place. This is handy, but it's even handier to save just in case. And just to top it all off, the soundtrack. Oh, the soundtrack is really good. There's music for pretty much everything in the game, and there's 2 hours of it. Red Dead Redemption has 6 chapters to its story. I'll review each chapter bit by bit, saying about the story and how it's impactful and all that. So there might be spoilers if you haven't played all of the game, but please stay.
But we're gonna ride out and we're gonna find some food. Everybody, we're safe now.
The game starts just after this Blackwater massacre, which you don't get to play through, but is mentioned quite a lot. You are heading into the mountains and it's really cold and snowy, which you and the gang are struggling through to survive. This is really effective as a tutorial, as it sort of just chucks you in the deep end, so you have to learn the gameplay mechanics to survive. When you're looking for shelter, the first little bit of story comes in where you have to fight an enemy gang called the O'Driscolls. This is sort of a side storyline that keeps in the game until around chapter 6. When you're raiding the house, it's more of a how to combat mission. you learn about the aim assist, the dead eye, the taking cover. Once this little part of the mission is over, you're ambushed by an O'Driscoll and you're forced into hand-to-hand combat. This bit sort of introduces you how to block, melee, dodge, and then after the fight it shows you that you can pick up items, so it's not like most other games where your items are just glued onto your head. There's a nice physics to the game. Hunting is also covered in this chapter after you rescue John Marston from the hills, giving a nice bit of fan service right at the beginning of the game. You must use this tracking feature to find 2 deer, and it's not just a one-off as it appears quite a lot in other missions and just the core gameplay. This chapter may drag on a bit, but it's very rewarding once you touch down on that nice green grass from the cold harsh snow. Chapter 2 is where the story really begins. You've left the snowy camp and now you're at a very warm, summery overlook near Valentine. This transition from the snow to the grass feels so organic as the map is so huge. Throughout the cutscene that you're travelling from with your camp and the gang from the snowy tundra to Valentine, it's so pretty as you can just see the snow fading away and now you're into a nice, sunny, rewarding part of the game. You ride with Micah Bell, probably the most hated, but not the worst, but definitely the most hated character in this game and probably the whole of the Rockstar ecosystem. You have to break him out of jail reluctantly to the player, but it still grants a pretty good shootout scene. It's a common theme in this game that you need money, and Dutch always has a plan.
Far too poor.
So you rob a train for your big break that he always preaches. This mission has a very direct parallel to a movie called The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. It's a nice touch that not many people would get, but it lays an iconic scene to one movie and one game and it merges them together. And just look how cool he is, pretty cool, OMG. In Chapter 2 there's one of my favourite missions of the game. You must find Lenny at the bar for just a drink, and then little do you know, after a few Strongbow dark fruits later, you're on a mad sesh, and then everyone turns black. The attention to detail in these missions are amazing. When you're looking around the bar searching for Lenny, the Greek bar gets more and more distorted. It's touches like this that make this mission and loads of other missions, but especially this mission, unique. I really like this chapter as it's definitely a Wild West game and involves your classic cowboy things. Rocking up to the saloon, shootouts, bar fights, prison escapes, and even a town massacre. You even have to herd sheep, even if the mission is infuriating. It still creates a vast mission, and missions like these throw the player off. It stays grounded but isn't boring. Remember that train? Well, in a harsh turn of events, the man who owns it, Leviticus Cornwall, is not very happy because you robbed his train. I think everyone will be pretty sad about that. And him and his men have John Marston and Stross? I don't know how to say his name. Hostage. You burst out the saloon and have a pretty badass shootout. Stross is injured, and then the mission turns from a shootout to a sort of push the payload mission. It's a creative way to turn the mission into a mission with higher stakes. This forces you to flee once this mission is over and moves you into Chapter 3. This chapter is basically just a Wild West Romeo and Juliet. A weird approach to the entire story that I don't think anyone really predicted, but it's a surprise to be sure, and a welcome one. The narrative goes that you've been caught between a family feud between the Braithwaites and the Greys. You're camped up at Clement's Cove. I might add that all camps are very near to the respective towns that the chapters are set in, and this camp is near a town called Rhodes. Dutch instructs you to not even think about opening the weapon wheel. It gets pretty annoying after a while, but it's for a good cause. On the way to Rhodes, just to find some work and money, you encounter the deputy and Sheriff Grey, who eventually you become to befriend, then unbefriend. They ask you to do a favour to stop these criminal Anderson boys, which you have nothing to do with or know anything about. They jump on a passing train and you have to chase them because you seem to be the only competent one to do so, similarly to the rest of the game. You are not allowed to kill the Anderson boys, so guns are not an option. Once you get on the train, the deputy rides beside you and sort of nags you more than your mum does at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Come on, get to the side of that train! Get alongside that flat carriage. You think you can jump on there?
After this feat of great braveness, Sheriff Grey declares you deputies.
Deputies.
And you get pretty friendly with the Greys. Once you get to Rhodes, you have to immediately start running errands for a Grey boy. His name's Beau, and here's the Romeo and Juliet bit. Him and his forbidden love Penelope from the opposite family that hate each other so much. You have to deliver letters from person to person, but you have to deliver letters backwards and forwards to the two lovers. He says he will pay handsomely, but he only gives you $10. It sort of undercuts the reward for the mission, as it's one of your first stealth missions, and it's pretty difficult to do. But I guess that's how the cookie crumbles. The rest of Chapter 3 sort of involves playing the two families against each other. As Dutch and Hosea says, if you play them against each other, you can rob them both, because we need money, and that's the plan. A good example of this is, whilst you're getting friendly with the Greys, you're also getting friendly with the Braithwaites. The sort of head of the Braithwaites tells you to torch their tobacco fields, the Greys. So you and Sean, an Irish person who you saved in Chapter 2, go down with some moonshine that you stole from this other gang, and you burn their tobacco fields. It's a really pretty mission. I'm really glad that they've managed to pull off some good fire physics in the game, because it seems to be that most games I always sort of noticed the fire graphics, and they always seem to let me down. It's a really stealthy mission where you have to avoid lots of guards. I really don't know why there's so many guards. The worst you can really expect is a bunch of hard lad year 8s, but it adds some really high stakes to the mission. The penultimate part of the chapter really ramps up when you get to the mission, A Short Walk in a Pretty Town, where you, Bill, Sean and Micah just have a nice stroll to see the Greys in the saloon. When something doesn't feel right, spoiler alert, Sean, the person who you'd just done a mission with, bites the bullet. Like, literally goes right for his face. And it's quickly discovered that it was the Greys who did it. And then you just go bam bam, shoot out, then go home. This chapter's probably got to be one of the most outer gang centralised in the game. What I mean is just, it's not really about the gang, it's more about these two families and just running errands for them. But it's a different storyline, and it adds a refreshing half-time break to the story. Like, literally, it's like Chapter 3 out of 6. It's a unique story, but still nothing new. However, it's still very creative with its mission, and even throughout all that, it still doubled down on the fact that it's a Wild West game, in the standing setting. Once you finish all these missions, you go back to camp and realise that the Braithwaites, the people who you thought you could trust and love, took John Marston's and Abigail Marston's son Jack. You go there, torch their house down, and discover that they've taken Jack to St. Denis, leading you into Chapter 4. Before we get into anything, I'd like to add that I don't think St. Denis works very well as a Wild West setting. I do get the message saying that the world is evolving and Wild West is no more, but it doesn't work with the whole bounty system. As it's St. Denis, prices are higher and you get higher bounties. So if you even think about walking around in St. Denis, you get a bounty and there's so many police you can't do anything except die. How many horses I've lost in this game whilst having a bounty? I might as well have just paid off the bounty, to be honest, yeah. I would have much rather that Dutch says that you're not allowed to have guns in Chapter 4 than 3. So it just reduces this frustration. The missions in Chapter 4 though are really good. You have to attend a rich man's house party, Angelo Bronte. You're able to retrieve Jack before this. The mission, A Gilded Cage, really feels like a Bond movie. You have to suit up and steal a ledger, which I still don't know what it is. Like, what's a ledger? It includes getting friendly with guards, following servants about, and it's pretty good. Chapter 4 is a really modern page of the story. After playing a bit of virtual poker, the game thinks that you should be pretty good at it. I'm really crap. But in the mission, a fine night of debauchery, you have to attend a poker boat with a man who has boatloads of cash. After a few games of poker, no matter what happens, you win about £500 to £1,000. And then you shoot everyone. Then you get back to the shore, then you rob a bank and you shoot everyone. And then everyone gets shot on their side, but on our side, spoiler alert, Hosea and Lenny die. These deaths are really impactful as you feel like you've built a relationship. Obviously Arthur has built a relationship, but you as the player have. Remember that mission in chapter 2? It's really just a relationship builder between Arthur and Lenny. And in the storyline, Hosea practically raised you. The missions seem very undercover stealth themed, but they aren't the standard fetch and retrieve ones, which makes me very happy. After that bank robbery, which seems to be the 480th one you do, John is locked up in jail, but instead of going to save him, you go to Guam. In chapter 5, you face the consequences for chapter 4. The robbery was a waste, you've lost friends, all the money from that robbery is now at the bottom of the ocean. Now you're stranded with no guns, no health tonics, no horses, nothing. It really opens your eyes to the fact that this game has consequences, and really shows the player that failure does exist. Your actions have consequences! In other missions, people may get shot, but nothing seems to really happen from it. But stakes were high in chapter 4, and the cost was high. But now you're on a chain, with your gang, being escorted to Guamish prison. But all of a sudden, you're saved by an unknown sponsor. They shoot all the guards and you get to loot them, so you get at least 1 or 2 guns. Turns out the people who saved you were some rebels on the island, and to make up for them, you get to release some of their people from a hanging. You meet the sort of leader figure of the group, Charles Gambino, and he says he'll arrange a boat for you so you can just go home. But it's not as easy as that. You have to bang bang shoot shoot pew pew through loads of Guamish troops and probably eradicate the whole island. Then once you get back to shore, after that boat he says he'll arrange to you, you have to run a 32-kilometre marathon back to camp, which I should mention is an abandoned mansion near Saint Denis. But the gang isn't there. Shock horror. Now this is a big spoiler alert, so if you want to skip this, go to whatever's on the screen, I don't know. To whatever mission you decide to do next, on your way you feel like you have a bit of a cold, you start having a coughing fit and you fall off your horse and the screen goes black. You're escorted to the doctor's office and he states that you have tuberculosis, a really deadly disease for the time. This is crushing if you've done your year 9 GCSE history and know that tuberculosis was not very easy to treat and was deadly if not treated correctly. Throughout the subsequent missions, you see Arthur's eyes get rashier and rashier, I don't know if that's a good way to describe it, and his coughing gets worse and worse. It's heartbreaking to the player because it is the landmark that is the beginning to the end of Arthur's story. Overall, Chapter 5 is a pretty insignificant one. That doesn't mean it wasn't good. The gameplay was fast, it was very fast paced and almost feels like a Lara Croft Tomb Raider game. Chapter 6 is easily the best chapter in the whole game. I don't use this word seriously, usually just ironic, but it just feels epic. Everything comes crashing down, but as our story closes, the O'Driscoll gang is disbanded, Sadie gets her revenge, but as these ends are tied, more stories are opened. John Marston is shot on yet another train heist, but as it's a prequel, you know he's going to be okay, I hope. And talking about the gang member Charlie, who's been in the game since beginning, he isn't a part of an Indian tribe, and that tribe are on a turf war with the US government. After a bit of disputing, this leads to probably one of the coolest pew pew bang moments of the game. In the mission My Last Boy, the Indian tribe fights an army at an oil rig. You're in charge of your segment of the gang, and you storm the oil rig as a family with a stampede of horses. As you're taking down the oil rig, it seems as if Arthur is in his last moments. A soldier has got a knife to his chest and Dutch just walks away. But as you're about to get stabbed, The last boy, Peter, shoots the 2 guards, but oh no, spoiler alert, he gets shot as well. It's unclear whether he lives or dies or not, or if I'm just special. These missions are what makes the game so immersive. You feel like chanting with the characters as you storm that oil rig. The final mission is so long, Red Dead Redemption, but it's so awesome, aren't they? You get back to the camp and discover that John Marston's wife, Abigail, has been taken by that Pinkerton detective agency. You feel like Dutch goes insane because he just doesn't care, and you sort of lose faith in him, like it's shown that Arthur does, and so does the player. So you take matters into your own hands. You and Sadie ride out to Ansburg and take down a bunch of Pinkertons in a really cool sniper segment of this mission. You end up confronting Mr. Milton, and it's revealed that Micah Bell, the person who everyone loves to hate, seems to have ratted out the gang. It's a bit of a surprise, and I don't think anyone expected it, but at the same time people expected it. I'm not really sure. But Mr. Milton gets popped like a pimple, but this doesn't mean the Pinkertons are finished. As you're riding back to the gang, there is a really cool epic solo riding scene with Arthur during the segment. It feels like he's close to dying from his tuberculosis, and there's hallucinogenic voice clips all around him from characters that have came and gone, where you really feel your Red Dead Redemption. You reach the camp and confront Micah and Dutch. No one believes you except Miss Grimshaw, but Micah just cold-heartedly shoots her. No one seems to care, because Micah seems to have played the gang like a fiddle, like they say in the old Wild West. But as tension rises, John Marston appears from the trees. And even with that, no one believes the gang. It makes you leave frustrated at the fact that people have betrayed you, because you've pretty much devoted your life to the gang and become the errand boy. Like you really just feel used after all you've done. If literally, if something happens, Arthur will do it. If your shopping needs doing, Arthur will do it. If your sheep need herding, Arthur will do it. John's the only one who takes your side, and as a standoff is about to occur, the Pinkertons show up again. You see, the pimple metaphor makes sense. You flee to a mountain where you're holding off the Pinkertons, and there's a great fan service moment where Arthur gives his hat to John, giving backstory to John Marston's infamous hat from the first Red Dead. During this chase away from the Pinkertons, your horse gets shot. See, it didn't really affect me, but there's a really heartfelt moment where Arthur says his farewells to the horse. I just bought mine, so I wasn't too bothered. But after speaking to a few people and watching a few Let's Plays, they've said that they had their horse from the beginning, and they've sort of built a connection with the horse, and it feels like losing a family pet. You get an option to either go with John, or to go get the money that Dutch has been hiding for this whole entire game. In my opinion, the best option is to go with John. You get 2 easy to obtain endings. Micah catches up to you on the hill and you fight to the death. There's a lot of cinematic fight sequences in this segment, and it's heart-wrenching to watch, but the actual playable fight I think goes on just a little bit too.
You've lost. Can't even kill a dying man.
Your death can go 2 ways, depending on the honor level that is shown at the bottom of the game for the entire game, which is a really smart idea. It doesn't feel like the honor system matters until it gets to this point. Throughout the whole of the game, you see these little dreamy hallucination sequences where you can either see a wolf or a deer. If your honor is low, you see a wolf. If your honor is high, you see a deer. The only thing I can say is that without this knowledge, it doesn't really feel consequential just killing a bunch of people and driving your honor right into the ground. If your honor is low and you go with John Marston, Micah ends up beating you and he shoots him in the face, with Dutch just walking off during this fight. This is the ending I got. My honor is just below average and I just left shock and awed. It was really sad. You managed to get your revenge in the epilogue. I was left shock and awed. Your corpse, for after playing this game for upwards to 50 hours, is just left to face, and you're left to lay there on a mountain, all on your own, with no one around. But if your honor is high, it's unclear whether you die of your wounds or if you die from TB. But either way, Arthur gets to lay on his back facing west, thinking of the good times he had as a cowboy, just like he told Jose. No matter the ending, you are softly serenaded away with the song May I, which is powerful enough to make even my dad cry. Overall, Red Dead Redemption 2 is the most intricately designed game that Rockstar and any games company's made ever. There was 8 years of hard, over-laboured work put into this game, and it really shows. There's never a dull moment. Every mission, every side quest, every just pop-up interaction just feels unique and special. The game isn't set in an empty world. Every person has a life. You get way more than 60 hours worth of content for £60. That's like £300 a movie, assuming every movie is £10 and 2 hours long, like they usually are. At this price point, it's a must-buy. And I don't even play story mode games, but Red Dead Redemption 2 is probably my favourite game ever. So, I really hope you enjoyed this video. It's taken me about 4 days to write this script, and it was about 11 pages long. There was a ton of effort put into the video, and I've probably been sitting here for about 45 minutes recording this with loads of outtakes. So I really hope that you smash a like, this gets more than 60 views, and you give a big subscribe, because I'd really appreciate that. So I'll see you in the next video. Comment down below what you feel about this game, and yeah, bye Red Dead Redemption 2.